Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm your host, and we're back. Today, we'll be talking about something that has really been occupying my mind, and we're talking about a GNU. And basically, since South Africa is a GNU, I wanted to talk about what the future holds for South Africa in this GNU and what is a GNU basically, and how the South African GNU is made up. I want to go into the complexities of it and basically how we can navigate a GNU as South Africans and stuff like that, right? In 2024, the African National Congress lost more than 50% of the national elections for the first time in South Africa's 30-year democratic history. This forced it to go into a pseudo coalition government with other political parties called the Government of National Unity. But what is the Government of National Unity? So, this video essay will investigate the nature of GNU, analyze the current structure and make up South Africa's GNU, and see what the future holds for South Africa's government going forward. Okay, part one. What is a GNU? The Government of National Unity is a form of government that seeks to include multiple political parties in the national legislature. It is usually implemented in times of crisis or instability, and usually it occurs when a single party cannot obtain the required majority to effectively run government. In South Africa, this majority is the 50% plus one rule, which means that in order to have a majority, you must have gotten 50% or more of the seats in parliament, right? This type of government helps to ensure that decisions can be taken without the complexities of minority rule, because very few decisions can be taken by minority rule as they can be overturned in parliament. Now, historically, governments of national unity have been met with less than satisfactory results. They are usually characterized by internal disagreements and collapses that result in minority rule. Votes of no confidence and new coalition governments form every day, and that is usually how governments of unity go. They last a year, 3 months, and then they break up, and a new government forms, and another government fails, and then a new president is called. It's usually very messy for that couple of years that coalition government is in power. Now, multiple countries have attempted a government of national unity with a mixed bag of results. For example, Zimbabwe entered such a government in 2008-9 after the controversial re-election of former President Robert Mugabe, who's late now. Now, what Mugabe's reasoning in this was basically that they did not want to avoid civil strife as a result of the government being unstable at the time, because many people wanted the opposition leader to be part of the government, basically. So it was to avoid the government becoming unstable and nothing being able to happen. And famously, in countries such as Poland, Italy, Britain, government has met with collapses. For example, France collapsed a couple of weeks ago, and that's basically how governments, coalition governments, or governments of national unity usually happen. Now, to the South African aspects, in 2024, as I've already said, South Africa had its national government elections, which saw the ANC lose its outright majority in parliament. And this was the first time this has ever happened where the NC has not gotten more than 50% of the votes. Now it got 39.8% or 39.7%, which is rounded off to 40%, right? Now, the reason for this loss was basically a limited trust in the government, with parties such as the MK party led by former President Jacob Zuma gaining popularity and taking force outside the ANC government, basically. And also parties like John Steenhuisen's Democratic Alliance and other going to basically take more votes out of the government. Now, this led to President Cyril Ramaphosa announcing that he would be forming a government of national unity, led by Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC alongside John Steenhuisen's Democratic Alliance, Gaten McKenzie's Patriotic Alliance, the Inkatha Freedom Party, and other, which form the majority of the national government.
And to give effect to this mandate, it was agreed that a government of national unity, which brings together parties from across the political spectrum, should be formed.
Further six parties, namely the Good Party, Al Jamaa, Rise Mzansi, the Pan Africanist Congress of Azania, the United Democratic Movement, and Freedom Fund Plus, which basically resulted in the new alliance obtaining the 72% of the seats in parliament, an outright majority. What this means is basically that the ANC and its partners can basically run government without the issues of possibly out being unable to pass pass rules and other stuff in government. This also resulted in Jacob Zuma's MK party and Julius Malema's economic freedom fighters becoming the official opposition parties. Now, South Africa's government has always been bloated. It has always been one of the most bloated and expensive governments in the world. But this time, it's a very bloated government. There are 76 ministers and deputy ministers alongside 31 ministry portfolios, including the president and the vice president. That's way too many ministers. The government has been challenged by a lot of inter-party politics, delaying cooperation among the legislature. One of the biggest of this was 2025 national budget speech, which was due in February, but since the parties could not agree on a framework, it ended up being delayed and revised multiple times, resulting in the speech finally being delivered in May this year. With only 1 year in power and tracks beginning to form, it is very interesting to see how this government manages to go into the 2026 local government elections. And more importantly, how if it lasts up until like the 29 national elections, where we could see basically the ANC fall lower, we could see a new government without the ANC being in power, we could see the ANC going back up, which I feel is impossible. And so, what are your thoughts on the GNU? What does it hold for South Africa's future? And how can we as South Africans navigate this? That's the question I have for today. See you in the next one. I'm monologue, son.